Hello, it's Angel here on a free sunny Sunday. A free sunny Sunday where I've actually been shopping on this free sunny Sunday. But wait, shopping you say? Yeah, but I've actually been shopping my collection. Oh, are you ready for this? I'm ready. Let's do this. So I have already filmed one of these videos previously. That video is going to be linked in the description box just down near. That was called #shopping my deck collection. Is it going to be a little mini series? I didn't plan for it to be a mini series. I don't know. However, the procedure I'm going to say that I went through in that video really helped me to not buy the Zeke's Arcana, and I haven't bought that deck either up to now. Fingers and toes crossed that will continue. Anyway, so where did this second instalment of this come about? Well, it's a good thing that you asked that, because I have a trip planned to England to go and visit my mum and to visit my sister, and you know when you go, well, I don't know if you do this, but when I do this, when I go to a different country, I start thinking about the decks that I could maybe get my mitts on without having to pay extra costs for the toll fees and like postage. And so I made the terrible mistake of going onto Little Red Tarot, onto their web shop, and I found a deck that I really wanted, which was the Dark Days Tarot. I'm going to put a picture in here and now, right there. Oh my goodness me, I love this tarot deck, and it's been on my wish list for a wee while. I mean, I'm going to grant you, it's been lower down on my wish list, but it has been on my wish list. And it's on sale right at the moment. So I was like, oh, well, it feels like a sign, doesn't it? It feels like it wants me to purchase it. And then I thought, wait, no, just wait a second. Let me put my sensible hat on. Let me think about the procedure that I went through in my first video of shopping my deck collection. And let's see if I can be a bit, what's the word? A bit... what's that word I'm looking for? A bit patient maybe, and not make any rash decisions. So I went to my tarot shelves and I started thinking about what it was about the Dark Days Tarot that really intrigued me and drew me in and made me want to purchase it and own it and buy it and love it and hug it and squeeze it. Well, you see where I'm going with this. And that's what's happening right now. I'm going to lead you through that process, and I'm going to show you the decks that I've come upon, which will hopefully, I promise nothing, stop me from purchasing the Dark Days Tarot. Let's get this done. The first deck we're starting with, well, that was the one I mentioned previously. That would be the Mother Tarot. This is by the same creator. This is an indie deck which I purchased. Beautiful illustrations. This is obviously a colour deck, which I love, absolutely adore. These are the backs, which are gorgeous. I haven't edged mine, and I'm not really sure I will. I'm going to pop these down here so we can see them together. Sorry for the cat hair. I'm on the floor and my cat walked across the mat a wee second ago. Anywho, so yes, so this is a deck that I'm using currently this month. What a surprise, what a coincidence. There are no coincidences. Stop babbling, Angel. And this is also a deck that I use for my Blood Moon Cycle practice with the Sacred Cycles Oracle. So when this one appeared this month for the work I'm doing with my inner garden, it was a bit of a surprise actually. Anywho, that's by the by. So when I was thinking of the Dark Days, I was obviously thinking of this one, and I was thinking, if I purchase the Dark Days, will that mean that I won't be using this one as much? Will the Dark Days take its place? Now, obviously, the Dark Days is black and white, but it is by the same creator, it's got the same art style. Although the Dark Days feels, I'm going to say that the Dark Days for me feels like it's got like a bit of a priestess vibe to it. Does that make sense? It totally does to me in my brain. And if you, oh sorry, morning for say, I'll put a thingy at the beginning of the doobly what's it. If you've got the Dark Days, you might be thinking the things I'm saying now and speaking about, you might think, well, no, that's not what the Dark Days is all about at all. But I don't have that deck, so I'm just going by the vibe that it gives me, how I experience what I've seen of the deck. What was I babbling on about? Yeah, so for that reason, I'm kind of thinking, do I need a second deck by the same creator? What a daft question. We all know the answer to that question. Of course. You know, I've got all of Sam Rook's decks. That's not the story. So I'm not against collecting decks by the same creator. Most definitely not. What I am against is purchasing a deck, bringing it in, that is then going to take the place of another deck that's already in my collection. So with that being said, let's look at some of the other decks that I feel not rival the Dark Days Tarot, but maybe give me a very similar vibe. Let's do that. Now, the first deck I thought of, which might be a bit of a surprise, is the Gorgon Tarot. This is a mass market deck. This is obviously a round deck. I've edged mine in red. And there's a bit of cat hair here. Goodness me, those cats, they get everywhere. Now, I'm not going to say the art style is the same, obviously, because obviously totally different creators. However, this is a very... there's a lot of strong feminine energy in this deck. It feels quite, yeah, it feels quite empowered to me, actually, this deck. And there's a lot of patterns going on, and there's obviously a lot of black and white, but not just black and white. I mean, you'll see, I'm going to trumpet some pictures in here as well. In the Dark Days Tarot, there are some cards that are white, that have a white background, and other cards that have a black background, which is why this deck kind of gave me a similar vibe. I'm also going to say that the Dark Days Tarot is square. Obviously this is round, however it's still a bit of an unusual shape, is it not, than the usual tarot shape. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me in my brain. Whether I'm explaining it very well, I don't know. Oh look, a checkered floor. Interesting. Yeah, and I'm going to say that I don't use this deck particularly very much. Now, I haven't put my finger on that as to whether it's because it's a black and white deck, if it's because it's a round deck. I don't know. And I read a bit of a blurb, can I say that? A bit of a blurb for the Dark Days Tarot. And the blurb read, inspired by the dark days of the lunar cycle, which kind of made me think of this deck as well, because this is a deck that I would want to use and have used previously for the Dark Moon. And I've done some Dark Moon readings with this one. And I'm just thinking, if I bring the Dark Days in, is it going to potentially stop me using this one? I don't know. I need to get this one out. And it hasn't, you know, I do have plans to work with it for the Dark Moon readings, because it feels like a no-brainer. It's round like the moon, and it's black and it's white. I don't know, but I don't know what it is that puts me off about these cards. Or maybe it's just not, it's time to work with me yet. I've mentioned before in previous videos, I'm in no rush to rehome decks. I'm quite happy for them to sit on my shelf. And I kind of had this thought process that if I've been called to purchase something into my collection, then sooner or later, at some point in my practice, I'm going to be called to work with it. Because I've had that kind of experience with other decks as well, whereby, you know, they might have sat on my shelf for a year. And I've tried reading with them, or tried looking through them and haven't been drawn to work with them, and then suddenly I just get like this, intuitive draw that, oh, I've got to get that deck out, I've got to work with it, and then it gives me some really great messages. I don't know. These are just my thoughts and my wonderings. Can I say that? I don't know. Let's move on to the next deck. So the next deck is the Macabre Tarot. I know, right? It's all very bizarre. These are gilded in gold. This is the mass market version. And, there was me speaking about Sam Rook earlier. And here we are looking at Sam Rook's decks. or deck, I love this deck. And this deck pairs for me, strange but true, with the Reclaim Oracle. I know, right? It doesn't make sense to me either. But you put those two together, oh my goodness, mate. The messages are beautiful. Not always beautiful. Sometimes they smack you in the face with a brick. But, sometimes you need those kind of messages, right? This kind of gives me, let me do this. This kind of gives me that vibe again, as does the Dark Days, where you've got the light, dark, light cards. I really like that. I really, really like that. Yeah, and I'm going to say about this deck is quite pippish, or some of the cards can be a bit pippish. However, I find this deck really intuitive, actually, surprisingly. Strange but true, and it is true. I do find this really intuitive, and I don't feel like I need to go to the guidebook all the time either. I do feel like the art styles are a little bit similar to the Dark Days, like the snake kind of cards. This kind of thing also, this cosmic vibe going on, makes me think of the Dark Days Tarot. I love this. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I do get a definite, when I was, like, you know, looking through my tarot shelf, I was thinking, yes, there's something about this deck that gives me the Dark Days vibe. Love this. And I definitely love this. So yeah. Speaking of black and white decks, or this was a black and white with some gold thrown in for good measure, let's talk about the Poesis Oracle, because that was another one that caught my eye, and I was thinking, yes, the Poesis Oracle. Now this is the French mass market version. I bought this in a couple of months ago, I think, which I shouldn't have done because I'm on a low buy year. I don't know how many times I've said that this year. Is it working out for me? Yeah, I'm going to give you a six monthly update on that very, very soon. Watch this space. And the artwork in this one again gives me a bit of a Dark Days vibe, does it not? I'm going to pop some pictures on here for you. Now the Poesis Oracle is cream and black. It's not black and white, but you know, tomato, tomato, potato, potato. No, wait, what? So for that reason, this also gives me a Dark Days vibe, Dark Days Tarot vibe. Obviously, it's not a tarot, it is an oracle deck. I've gone through the guidebook and written all of the keywords in English. I don't speak French. But I still find that these are really intuitive, even with the keyword in French. I think I can draw a lot from these images. And the guidebook, I'm sure if you've heard about this deck or seen this deck, you'll know that the guidebook is all the entries in the guidebook are poetry entries. Goodness me, that took a lot to get there. But like all this dotted artwork, I feel that that's also what the Dark Days Tarot has. I could be completely wrong. I'm going to pop some pictures in, as mentioned, or images in here. And oh no, I've had a terrible thought. Maybe these two would work really nicely together. No, Angel, no, definitely not. Get that thought out of your mind. Yeah, I find this deck really versatile. It goes with, you know, I could pretty much put it with a paper bag and it would give me a fantastic reading. Not that I would pair it with a paper bag, but you know what I'm sort of saying, right? I could pair this pretty much with any deck in my collection and it would, you know, it's so versatile, I think. Oh, goodness me, what is wrong with me today? I've obviously gotten too much sun. Actually, I haven't even been out in the sun. I've just got a bit of sun on me just right there. Anyway, so yeah, that was the Poesis Oracle. Let's move on to the next deck. So while I was sitting looking at my tarot and oracle shelf, this deck came into my peripheral vision. This is in one of these bags, which I purchased when I was in Crete, obviously, is where I was. That's where I purchased this bag, and I loved it. And I was, what's the word? Tidying up my tarot shelves a couple of days ago, and I decided that I disliked the box. And I decided, why do I not just throw the box away? That's exactly what I should do, and that's what I have done. And I've replaced it with this bag, which totally suits because of the eyes, and there are lots of eyes in this deck, which you're going to see in just a second. I dislike the backs. I'm sorry, I do. I don't think they go. And I edged mine in blue initially. I need to re-edge it because I also chopped off the borders of this deck. There used to be white borders all around the images, and I chopped mine off with scissors. That was my first my first deck trimming job, and when I got my super duper paper guillotine Meduberry what's it, I I redid the modification on it and did it properly. However, I haven't yet re-edged it. So anyway, with that being said, goodness me, that was a lot of information, wasn't it? This totally also reminds me of, or makes me think of, the Dark Days Tarot. And I think it's because there's a lot of figures in this deck like this. This is especially in the sword suit, with these like almost like silhouetted figures. Now I know this is a colourful deck, but it does give me the same kind of vibe. We've got this not silhouetted. It's almost, I don't know. It almost makes me able to. Or what am I trying to say here? These figures being in this shadow aspect, it makes me feel like I can pop myself into the card. And the same here again. I just find it really, really interesting. And I used this quite a bit when I first got it, and then since then I put it away and I haven't used it. And I'm not a big fan of the guidebook on this one, which, you know, yes, I can use it without the guidebook, yeah, but that thought hadn't really occurred to me until recently. I know it's daft, isn't it? And I've been thinking recently as well that I'm not in the same place I was when I first purchased this deck, or my older decks. I'm not in the same place on my tarot journey. I've kind of taken a few more steps forward since then, and I've learned a lot more. And I'm trying to remind myself that just because decks haven't previously worked for me when I purchased them, that they might well work for me now because I'm a little bit further on in my journey. Does that make sense? I hope so. Yes. So this does definitely give me, I don't know what it is, apart from what I just mentioned about the silhouetted figures or the shadowy figures, a Dark Days Tarot vibe. I mean, look at this. It's gorge. And I'm going to say, actually, I saved this deck from being rehomed. Saved it. I did save it. It was in my rehome bag, and I'd taken it to work to give to my friend and my colleague who I was gifting. I think I gifted 24 decks to. And I popped the bag down at work outside their personnel, in the personnel room. And I saw this deck looking at me from the bag, and I was like, do I really want to rehome this deck? And I was like, yeah, I should, because I haven't used it. I've had it probably like 4 years since I first started my journey. I was like, yeah, you really should, because I haven't used it. And then I just turned to walk away, and I was like, no, wait, I need to rescue that deck. I need to keep that with me. So I took it out the bag, and I'm really glad I did, actually. Do you have this deck? Do you use it? What kind of reader is it for you? Let me know in the comment section. I think when I was using this deck, when I first started my journey, that I was just too new to tarot. And although it is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, there are some not deviations, but I don't know. There were some cards that didn't speak to me, or maybe I was just clearly in the wrong place at that time. So it'll be interesting to know how this one reads now for me. Oh, there we go. So that's another deck that needs my attention and needs for me to work with it. And it's definitely a deck that I feel meets the criteria of the Dark Days Tarot. So I was speaking earlier about not wanting to bring a deck into my collection that would take the space of another deck. And when I was looking at my tarot shelf, I even went to my desk and was looking at the decks on my desk. And this one came to mind, which of course was like a no-brainer. This is the Wanderer's Tarot, I think it's called. I always have trouble remembering the name of this one. This one's got beautiful silver gilding. It's a mass market deck. Here we go, let's get it in the shot. Be helpful, wouldn't it? And this is a deck I use every single day. This is the deck that I have started to do card pulls on again. Or actually, let me just back up. I hadn't planned to do card pulls, daily card pulls, but when this deck came into my collection, that's what I started doing to get to know this deck. And if you've already possibly heard me say previously in other videos, this deck helps me with my squirrel brain to focus my energy, to focus the energies to help me decide what to do in my practice. Does that make sense? I hope so. Or creative projects. That's what this deck has kind of edged its way into for me. And so for that reason, this is really important that this deck doesn't get replaced by anything else, because, you know, I really value this deck. You know, on those days when I do feel that squirrel brain coming in, or that squirrel energy coming through, I take this deck out and I think, wait a second, let's just, you know, focus here. What do I need to do in my practice today? Or what do I need to do with this creative project that I'm doing today? Not that, you know, any creative project is really, you know, important in that way, but, you know, it's important to me. And this deck really helps me do that. Anyway, so when I was looking at my desk, I was like, yeah, of course, the Wondrous Tarot, that should totally be in this video. And, you know, it should totally be in this list, because I suppose it's because, again, we've got these images on black. We've got this white drawing on black. It gives me the same vibe as the Dark Days Tarot. I love this card, and this card has been stalking me recently, as well as the Five of... Let me just show you. Did I go past it already? As well as the Five of Wands, which are the Five of Feathers. And I'm going to tell you why they've been, or not why it's been stalking me, but why it's been intriguing me. Please mingle a wee moment while I find the card. If I'd been prepared for this, I would have found the card previously, but I didn't. Here. Is this not a bit bizarre? Isn't that interesting? That's why I love this deck. There are some things that, some intuitive messages that really leap out at me. I just find it really interesting. So yes, so for that reason, I don't want to bring in the Dark Days if it will then compete against another deck. So yeah, that's where I got up to with this deck. I don't know where I'm going with that. The end. 3 decks left. Now, I was talking about the Priestess energy that I get from the Dark Days Tarot, which made me think of this deck. This is an Oracle deck, obviously, the Priestess of Light Oracle. This is a deck that I used to use for my Bastet practice. These are the backs, and these are the fronts. And the dark, yeah, so I don't work so much with, or I don't work with Bastet. And so this deck has kind of been redundant for quite a long time now, and I have a desk beside me which has my goddess books and my goddess decks in, and that's where this one's been sitting. It's been sitting there for a long time. Anywho, that was by the by. The point is, the Dark Days Tarot really gives me a High Priestess vibe, which kind of made me think of this deck. Yeah, which is why I pulled it forward. And obviously, I mean, obviously this one has colour in it, and the art styles are totally different. But it is about that tapping into a certain energy, isn't it? If you do have the Dark Days Tarot, I would love to know your thoughts on it. I'd love to know what kind of energy that deck has, and, you know, I'd love to know what kind of readings you use that deck for as well. Yeah, I promise. No, I don't promise. I was going to say I promise it won't make me buy the deck, but I can't promise that because I've got no character. But I would still love to know. I would still really love to know. I really like this deck. It was a long time since I used it, I've got to say, and that usually happens actually. That usually happens to me with decks that have already had a purpose within my practice, especially because this one was almost dedicated to Bastet. And I suppose I kind of think that, you know, if my practice with Bastet was to start again, or to, you know, continue after a bit of a hiatus, is that the word I'm looking for? I think so. And that I was using this deck for another practice, that I would almost be like, it would almost be like, what's the word? Disrespectful. Because this kind of feels like Bastet's deck. Oh, does that make sense? I don't know. It sort of makes sense in my mind. It really, really does. But when I say the words, I'm like, that didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. But let me know if you're the same. If you have a deck that's, you know, dedicated to a specific practice, are you then a little bit reluctant to use it for other things? Let me know in the comment section. I'd love to know. 2 more decks. They are two decks that you've probably seen quite a few times, but I'm going to show them anyway, and I'm going to explain why they make me think of the Dark Days Tarot. So just going back to the Dark Days blurb that I read, it mentions that the Dark Days Tarot is perfect for waning, reflective, dark moon days. Dark lunar days encourage deep rest and heightened sensitivity and invite a more intuitive state, which kind of made me think of this deck. Any guesses which one I'm going to show? If you've been on my channel for a while, you might recognise it. You'll definitely know it. And that kind of made me think of shadow work and self-reflection, which is obviously this deck for me, the Darkwood Tarot. I'm not going to show this very much because I've shown it so many times very, very recently, and no doubt I'll show it in my May favourites because I've been using it this month as well. So this deck, you know, I don't want any other deck to rival this deck, which I don't think it would, because I've grown so bonded with this deck that I don't believe that any deck can come in the way of this one. But I don't want that. I don't want there to be a chance of that. So yeah, that is the Darkwood Tarot. I've got one last deck which kind of popped up. It kind of, you know, it came into the race right at the last minute. Let's take a look at that one. So last but not least, the Solara Occulta. Oh my goodness me. I always have trouble saying that name. That's why I put the box out, so I don't have to say it. But I make the rookie mistake every single time. These are the beautiful backs. These are the sides which were gilded out the books. This was a Kickstarter I backed. I got this last year, wrapped it for Christmas, opened it for Christmas, didn't use it because I felt it was an autumnal deck. And then I think I used it last month and I loved it. However, I didn't. Wait, what am I trying to say here? I loved it. However, I didn't want to continue my journey with it. I wanted to, you know, let this one go back on the shelf and bring other decks that I haven't used yet out. But nothing against this deck. This deck was amazing. I loved it. It's a Total Rider-Waite-Smith clone, I would say. I love this kind of fantasy feel going on here. And the Dark Days Tarot also has that bit of a whimsical fairy tale feel slightly. I feel there's like quite a few mermaids going on in that deck, or that are in that deck. And it's got a really strong feminine energy as well in that deck, which kind of reminds me of this one, which is the reason why I brought it forward. It's also, obviously, this one has got this whole black and white thing going on again. Obviously, there is a reserved colour palette with this one, but it's got that whole, you know, white background, black background, which I love, which I didn't realise I loved, but I'm really realising that I do actually love that very much. I mean, here we go again. Gives you another example. And I love all this pattern behind, you know, behind the image. I just love it. I love it. I love this tower card. I just love this deck. It's gorge. I was very hesitant when I first started looking through this deck, when I got it at Christmas, when I opened it at Christmas. I was like, I do like it, but I don't, what's going on here? I don't understand the, I don't understand the hype around it, but I think there was just so much hype around the deck that when I opened it, I was like, But now it's kind of had a bit of time on my shelf. I kind of feel, I don't know, I kind of wonder what I was thinking when I first opened it, because it's a beautiful deck and it's a great reader. And yeah, I'm really, really happy that I brought it into my collection, and I'm so glad that I did. I can't imagine my collection without this deck in it now, to be honest. I wouldn't want to be without it. But that's the way things happen, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Sometimes it's what I was speaking about earlier, that we can have decks, we're drawn to bring a deck into our collection, and then we're not drawn to work with it, and then it calls to us sometime later, which, as mentioned, is why I don't rehome decks. I'm not in any rush to rehome any decks. I let them, you know, sit out their time on my shelf for quite for a couple of years at least before rehoming them. So yes, that was that was the last deck. Should we do a bit of a tally up? I think we should. Let's do this. Let's pull one of these forward. Let's pull that forward. Okay, how many decks do we think we've got that remind me of the Dark Days? Quite a few. 1, 2, 3. That was the True Heart Tarot. 4, 5, 6. We're not going to get them all in. 7, 8. Oh my goodness me. 9. If I've counted correctly, 9 decks that remind me of the Dark Days Tarot. So I think it's going to be a definite no, that one isn't going to be coming into my collection, even though it's on sale. I don't think I need it. I really don't. And I'm going to say that this has been a really excellent way to talk myself out of purchasing indie decks. What I'm going to say is I need to start using this method to talk myself out of mass market decks, because I'm going to say that I always think about indie decks being, you know, they're obviously very expensive. They are expensive, and they, you know, the postage cost is a lot, and the tull fee to get it into the country is quite a lot as well, which suddenly, you know, shoots the cost, you know, right up through the roof. However, mass market decks aren't so cheap either, and I kind of need to do this to talk myself out of buying what I perceive to be cheaper decks, because, you know, they're not as cheap as chips, are they? They are still quite expensive. And I say that because I've recently purchased the Supernova Tarot, and even the, I think it's called the Tarot Under the Oak Tree. I'm going to put the names on the screen if I said that incorrectly. And when I purchased them, they haven't arrived yet. I was thinking, why have I allowed myself to buy these 2 mass market decks? Yet for an indie deck, I would go to this procedure, I'm going to say, and, you know, shop my deck collection. So I really need to get my finger out and do the same method for both indie and mass market decks. Now I'm babbling, but I'm going to say that the Supernova Tarot and the Tarot Under the Oak Tree are going to be wrapped for my birthday and for Christmas. So yeah, so that's it. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, and thank you for spending some time with me. I'm going to wish you a lovely morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world. Take care. Let me know in the comment section if you have the Dark Days Tarot, and let me know what you think of it, and what the energy is like, and what kind of readings you use it for. Yeah, and let me know also what decks are kind of, you know, luring you to purchase them, or, you know, enticing you to purchase them. Which decks are highest on your wish list right at the minute? Let me know in the comment section. I'd love to know. Yeah, take care. Toodaloo.